gang violence and other kind of violence.
Get away! I could be at work, in school, in my car, and I can still get shot by the police. But I can get shot anywhere.
So it is what it is.
What's good, Shadow Realm? It's your boy Jenquavius Jackson, and y'all already know I'm demonetized and shadow banned in this bitch. So if you want to contribute, go to the Cash App, the PayPal, the GoFundMe, or join the Patreon. Also, don't forget to visit the merch store for all your favorite BGZM News 17 gear, including our exclusive Trump is a Blood t-shirt. Go fast before they sell out. They are already flying off the shelves, no cap. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time.
I'm here on the corner of MLK and Medgar Evers, and it's a very tranquil scene compared to just a couple hours ago where a drive-by shooting just took place. Excuse me, I'm getting live updates as we speak. I've just been updated to the amount of casualties from this drive-by shooting, and I'm getting reports that 2 people were actually declared deceased and 27 others were shot and injured but are in stable condition. And although we must pray for the families of the fallen, we must also praise God for the aim of the super gremlin. If you want to know more about the victims of this crime, make sure you add BGZM News 17 on Patreon at www.patreon.com/blackgenzmindset. Also, don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and comment on the video to continue the discussion on how we can find solutions to all this gun violence in the streets. For more hard-hitting news coverage from the community, by the community, I'm Jenquavius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, BGZM News 17.
And cut.
All right, dog. Let's get the out of here before these niggas come back.
Whoa. Yo! Ain't that nigga J?
Nah, that ain't me. That ain't me.
He just went live
That
with
ain't
that
me.
funky ass suit on.
That's that nigga. That's not me.
Hey, get that nigga.
Jenquavius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia. Pray for me.
Right now, East Point police are searching for the shooter who opened fire at a block party with more than 100 people. This happened near Cedar Avenue and Harlan Drive on Saturday. Andrea Priester was sitting in the back of a car when it happened. She was hit and killed.
Wow. So you have a black woman who was shot at a East Point block party in Atlanta, Georgia, very dangerous area in the city. I've already spoken on not getting in these large gatherings. I've said before that the black community, the community, needs to refrain from large gatherings for an extensive amount of time until we get a hold on the extreme violence that's going on in our communities. Now, a lot of people like to talk down to me, say I'm cooning and all this kind of stuff, but you see the results right here. Another black woman was killed in a large gathering of over 100 black men and women. And it could have been more, honestly, because the super gremlins are on demon time.
This morning, her family is pleading for anyone with information to please come forward.
Took our daughter away from us. It's a very deep, hard loss. So just turn yourself in.
Don't wait till it happens to your family. Because until this happened to me, I was in the first 48. I never thought this would happen to my child.
Yeah. And that's how it is. A lot of people don't think it'll happen to them in the black community, but you are one block party, you're one hood function, you are, one Thug Max Alpha Simp away from getting killed. And the environment right now in the community is tense. She was a mother of 2 going to a block party. For one, you are a single mother of 2. Why the hell are you partying? You need to focus on your children, your newborn. You got a newborn and you out partying already. These women's their priorities are all over the place. And, a block party, really? and you thought that was going to go well in East Point of all places. I just don't understand how the thought processes and just the decision making is going on. But at the end of the day, I don't want to victim blame. Ultimately, it is the onus is on the perpetrator, but you have to be smarter in the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis.
Priester leaves behind 2 sons. There is a $3,000 reward to catch her killer. If you have information, please call police.
We begin tonight with a mother of 2 being shot and killed at a neighborhood block party in East Point. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us for Fox 5 News at 5. I'm Tom Haynes.
I'm Courtney Bryant. Police say Andrea Priester was an innocent bystander. She was leaving the party when someone opened fire and shot up the car she was riding in.
Fox 5's Deidre Dukes live for us tonight in East Point at police headquarters there. Deidre, you spoke to that victim's family.
So they shot up the car. Woo! These super gremlins are on demon time.
Now, we talked to the victim's parents here at police headquarters this morning. Now, they came here in hopes of talking to police investigators. They were trying to find out more about the search for the person who shot and killed their daughter, leaving 2 young children without a mother.
She ain't have nothing to do with her. Nothing. She's a good girl.
Andrea Priester's parents won't rest until their daughter's killer is behind bars. The 24-year-old was leaving a neighborhood block party here in the area of Cedar Avenue and Harlan Drive at around 11:30 Saturday night when someone opened fire.
They was leaving the party. I guess the block party got out of hand. They was leaving the party, and the car got shot up.
Medics rushed her to Grady Hospital, where she was.
And when you hear somebody say, "Oh, a block party got out of hand," you usually think of maybe there was too many people. It got rowdy, too many drunk people. People couldn't get out of their parking spots. But in the Black community, when we say a block party got out of hand, that bitch got shot up.
Was pronounced dead. Police tell Fox 5 Priester and an unidentified man who was wounded in the shooting were innocent bystanders.
This is anybody's worst nightmare. I'm just still waiting to wake up.
The Roswell High School graduate was a single mother, raising her 2 young sons in Atlanta. The children were with Priester's family when they received the devastating news.
Oldest we know he asked me, saying, "Grandma," he said, "My mama died, yes or no?"
No one was apprehended on scene. Early in the investigation, detectives are releasing few details in the case. Police have not said how many people were involved or if they've identified possible suspects.
I just need some answers. We need some answers, some type of closure.
Priester's parents are offering a $1,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in the case.
They took our daughter, a niece, a cousin, a friend, a mother for nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Just a heartbreaking loss for that family. Now, the victim's parents are urging anyone with information to come forward and contact East Point.
And that is going to be the most difficult part about this, because East Point ain't no hoe now. I mean, these are some straight hood ninjas. East Point is rough, rugged, and these guys don't rat out there. They really don't. And they definitely will make it hard for somebody who is giving information to the police.
Police, you can remain anonymous. In East Point, Deidre Dukes, Fox 5 News.
Just a devastating situation. Deidre, thanks.
What's good, Shadow Realm? It's your boy, Jenquavius Jackson, and y'all already know I'm demonetized and shadow banned in this bitch. So if you want to contribute, go to the Cash App, the PayPal, the GoFundMe, or join the Patreon. Also, don't forget to visit the merch store for all your favorite BGZM News 17 gear, including our exclusive Trump is a Blood t-shirt. Go fast before they sell out. They are already flying off the shelves, no cap. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time.
Sir, happening right now at 11, police are searching for the shooter who opened fire at an East Point block party, killing a 24-year-old mother of 2. This happened Saturday night in the area of Cedar Avenue and Harlan Drive. Police say someone opened fire in a crowd of more than 100 people. One of those bullets striking and killing Andrea Priester.
And Atlanta continues. The mayor and all the officials continue to say crime is down, crime is down. crime is not down, and it is really severely hurting the Black community.
She was sitting in the back of a car, and tonight her family is pleading for anyone with information to please come forward.
Took our daughter away from us. It's a very deep, hard loss. So just turn yourself in.
Don't wait till it happens to your family. Because until this happened to me, I always see the first 48. I never thought this would happen to my child.
Priester leaves behind two young boys, 6-year-old Jonathan and 2-year-old Joshua. You can see them there on your screen. Right now, there's a $3,000 reward to catch her killer. Call East Point Police if you have any information. You can also submit an anonymous tip to Crime Stop.
The devastating story of a mother of two caught in the crossfire. Right now, police are offering thousands of dollars to help find whoever was involved in that shootout at a block party on July 4th. Channel 2's Michael Dowdna live now at the East Point Police Station. And Michael, more than 100 people were there, and you spoke to the family. They're pleading for anyone with information to come forward.
Yeah, that's right, George. I mean, you can just tell the emotion in their voices here because, well, Andrea was an innocent bystander, but now her two children, ages 6 and 2, are without their mother, and they're relying on the public and the investigators here to find that lead to actually solve this case.
She's one of the people, when you meet her, you'll never forget her because her smile is contagious.
Family members can't help but remember 24-year-old Andrea Priester's smile and her devotion to family.
We miss her calls, we miss her texts.
But on Saturday, she went to this East Point neighborhood for a block party.
She'll be able to go out and have a good time and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, and you should be able to go out and have a good time and all this kind of stuff, but you can't. And if we don't acknowledge that the Black community has a problem with these large gatherings, then we won't be able to fix the issue. So we know that we can't gather in these large crowds and quote unquote have a good time unless there's an extensive or expansive amount of security. Then we should refrain from doing so because it results in, outcomes like this.
Neighbors say as the party broke up, they heard an argument on a nearby street, followed by gunfire.
That's when we saw the first gunshot that came to the wall.
Josue Hieriel Simon remembers as dust fell from the wall as a bullet hit the ceiling and flew across the room, forcing him to crawl with his sister to safety.
Thanking God also that none of the bullets hit us because that bullet could have gone lower and hit one of us.
But Andrea wasn't as lucky as she was fatally shot in the backseat of a car.
Right now, we do not have a person of interest with.
Despite around 100 people being in the area, police say they do not know who is responsible. So they are offering a reward to try and get someone to come forward.
I hope that somebody would come forward and let us know something, at least a name, street name, something that we can go off of.
For the family, well, getting information is not only about justice, but for closure, to try and find some way to move forward.
Just think if it was your child. And just think on how you would feel. And just do the right thing.
I can't stay on one feeling at all. I go from angry to mad to disappointed to needing answers.
Now, the family has set up a GoFundMe to help pay for those expenses, especially with those two young children now without their mother. They are also encouraging you to call Crime Stoppers or East Point PD if you have a tip that could help solve this case. We're live in East Point. Michael Dowdna, WSB Tonight.
And let's hope, Michael, with this story, more tips come in. Thank you.
Well, East Point Police and a Georgia family, they are offering a combined $3,000 reward in hopes of solving a homicide.
Andrea Priester, a mother of two young kids, was shot while sitting in a vehicle near a block party over the weekend. 11 Live's Teresa Bowles is at the East Point Police Department. Teresa, whoever shot the woman is still out there tonight?
That's what police tell me. Andrea Priester's parents just left the funeral home making her arrangements today, but they say they still haven't seen her body. 5 days since her death and still no arrest either.
I'm with my mommy and I want her back.
Pain reverberating through Andrea Priester's entire family, from her 6-year-old son, Jonathan, to his grandparents, who now have to raise him.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm angry.
Yeah, it's a lot of anger.
I'm angry.
And, this type of anger usually is if the loved ones or, maybe people that knew her were younger, this would warrant a retaliation and someone would spin the block and probably go and delete some other black man whether they know who did it or not, but just to show strength, they go spin the block. And this is why these rap beefs continue. Now, in this case, it was presumably a random shooting at a block party. But, you know, the family is now left with emptiness, and this woman's children don't have anybody to take care of them. Now they're going to become grand ninjas, okay, grandparents who are raising their, bastard children. And the cycle continues. Now, where is the father? I mean, we can most likely conclude that he's not in the picture. And I mean, it's just tough times for the community, and they're not ending anytime soon.
It just seems so unfair.
Unfair that Sherry Woodbury's daughter leaves behind not one son, but two after what she calls a senseless act of violence.
Unfortunately, right now, as far as the gun situations go, it's not a good situation.
East Point Police Sergeant J.L. Watkins explains on Saturday night, more than 100 people went to a block party at the corner of Harlan Drive and Cedar Avenue. Then someone fired a gun, hitting two people, including Priester, as she sat in a car. She died at the hospital.
Still kind of in shock. It's very hard. A parent should never have to bury their child.
Andrea's father, Andrew Priester, says his daughter loved to celebrate.
For Father's Day, she brought the grandkids, both of my grandsons, to see me. We went to a water park and just spent the whole day together. Didn't think that was the last time that we'd be spending time together like that.
But Woodbury says having fun should never end with the loss of a life. And so far, no suspect. East Point Police originally offered a $2,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest and indictment. But the family put up another $1,000. An arrest would be one piece of closure, Woodbury says, could ease the pain.
That would help some, because we need answers, and then we want to, whenever these kids get older, they're going to want answers. And we want to have the answers for them.
The family says they are also holding a candlelight vigil this Friday at 7 in the evening on Cedar Avenue, where she was killed. Live in East Point, Teresa Bowles, 11 Alive News.
All right, Teresa, thank you so much.
Right now, East Point police are trying to find the shooter who killed a Metro Atlanta mother.
Gang violence and other kind of violence. So it is what it is.
What's good, Shadow Realm? What's good, Shadow Realm? It's the Black Gen Z Mindset. Make sure you go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe. Let's get into the video. Damn, I fucked that intro up. Yeah, I messed that intro up. But anyways, we are going to get into it. Guys, we have to talk about Project 2025. Okay? We got to talk about it. A lot of people are fear-mongering about Project 2025. I'll show you some of those videos. We're not going to go too in-depth on the news stories because I really, really want to dig into the document. But I do have to tell you, I do have to tell you exactly what the mainstream media is reporting Project 2025 is. So let's get right into it. Let's see how the mainstream media is presenting this plan, mandate, action for America document called Project 2025, created by the Heritage Foundation. Let's go.
Project 2025, the 920-page policy manifesto by the conservative group, the Heritage Foundation, highlights a wish list of economic and financial plans under a potential Trump second term. While Trump hasn't said he doesn't know anything about Project 2025, he says he doesn't know anything about it. We did a segment recently with NBC's Vaughn Hilliard showing how connected to it he actually is, even if he denies it. Proposals include higher taxes on lower income Americans, increased student loan payments, and major cuts to Medicaid. Steve Ratner has made his way to the Southwest Wall with charts on those financial implications of Project 2025. And Steve, your first chart shows there would be higher taxes on the less well-off. Tell us about it.
Sure, Mika. Look, taxes are obviously perhaps issue number one on the minds of many Americans, and Project 25 is very clear about what it wants to do. It essentially wants to restructure our tax system into only two tax brackets, 15% for those earning less than the Social Security maximum, which is, I think, about $166,000 a year, and 30% for those earning above. But that would radically change how much different Americans pay. It would actually increase the amount that people making less than $150,000, less than that cutoff, pay $1,000, $2,000, $2,500. They would pay more taxes, but people above the wealthy would pay dramatically less taxes. If you earn $400,000 a year, you would get a tax cut of about $14,000. So an extraordinary shift in the tax burden away from the wealthy and toward the less wealthy. This is an even more extreme version of what Trump did in his tax bill, the TCJA, Tax Cut and Jobs Act, back in 2017 or so. And you can see here the impact of that was similarly regressive in that people at the bottom got a much smaller percentage increase in their tax cut, and the people at the top got a much larger tax cut. 85% of this tax bill went to people making more than $75,000 or to business. And so essentially what this proposal would do is take this and put it on steroids.
So, Steve, the Biden administration's attempts to actually lessen the student loan burden really enraged Republicans. In fact, whenever you would bring up January the 6th, it seems that a lot of Republicans go, yeah, well, look what Joe Biden did with student loans. And they were serious. Like, that's sad, but they were serious. This Project 2025 thing actually is going to increase the burden on people with student loans, right?
Yeah, so Joe Biden did make a bunch of proposals. Some of them got litigated and overturned, but then he found other ways, which I'm going to talk about in a second, to address the student loan burden. But what Project 2025 would do essentially would be to eliminate all of what the Biden administration did to cut the burden of student loans. And you can see here, this is broken down by education and by, all the way from some college but no degree to master's program. And so in terms of the monthly student loan payments, for the people at the bottom, their monthly average student payments would go from $78 to $308. So a huge increase for those with very little college, people who don't probably have great jobs and for whom this is a big burden. And then smaller increases, but still substantial, all the way up to people who have master's degrees. So completely wiping out everything the Biden administration has done for the last 3.5 years. But let me show you one impact of what the Biden administration has done. We all know that student loan debt has been a huge problem, and it's gone up and up and up. It's gone up and up per student, and this is even inflation adjusted, and it went up under Trump. But for the first time since at least 2007, student loan debt per borrower has actually gone down for three straight years. Still really high, but you can actually see.
Yeah, and that's just because, for one, people are not going to college for as long as traditionally back in the day. And also, Biden did do student loan relief plans, which were not approved, but he still did them with some, executive orders. So, I mean, so all in all, I mean, I really, even the mainstream media, they're not really telling us how this is racist, because online, all I'm seeing is this is a racist thing, and Project 2025 is racist. So I'm really trying to figure out where are the racist talking points in this document.
Tangible progress made under the Biden administration in reducing that student loan burden.
Yeah, and so we're talking about higher student loans. We're talking about higher taxes for working class Americans. And finally, let's talk about the impact that it's going to have to Medicaid. There used to be this this idea, oh, Medicaid, that just goes to poor people living in urban areas. And what a lot of Americans have figured out since Medicaid cuts have come, no, it actually, that's money that actually funds rural hospitals. That's money that funds nursing homes. That's money that funds a lot of medical care, a lot of medical treatment for Americans of all demographics in all parts of America. And Donald Trump if he really does embrace 2025, like he said in the past, he's going to support more massive cuts to Medicare.
Yeah, Joe, you're right.
And Medicaid.
Medicaid. You're right, Joe. Medicaid, I think there's something like 90 million people on Medicaid in America, 38 million children. So you're right. It is not just some urban program for a few poor people. And what Project 2025 wants to do is put limits on how long you can stay on Medicaid, effectively kick people off Medicaid, put in work requirements, put in a whole number of restrictions that would dramatically change the number.
Yeah, because they're pushing them to privatize medical care so that the free market decides what the prices are. I mean, I don't see an issue in that, because the reason why we've got so many exorbitant drug costs, it is because of government intervention, and it is because of big pharma and their influence. But if it was just up to the market, obviously you want to make sure that the drug they're putting out is approved. And I don't agree with FDA approval, but there has to be some type of approval system. But I mean, other than that, it doesn't seem like that's a bad idea.
A number of people who are on Medicaid. So this map shows you by color coding, the darker colors being the worst hit places, what share of enrollees could lose their Medicaid. So in Virginia, in Wisconsin, in Idaho, you could be talking about 40 to 50% of people being kicked off of Medicaid. In every state, pretty much, you can see that it's anywhere from 10% up to 40% all the way across the country. It would be a massive change in a program that, as you said, is absolutely central to our healthcare system and to the lives of so many people who can't afford their own healthcare. But it's also a question politically of whether this is really a great idea for the Republicans to embrace, because Medicaid is actually extraordinarily popular. Not surprisingly, it's supported by 90% of Democrats versus only 8% who have an unfavorable view of it. But even among Republicans, 65% of Republicans think favorably about Medicaid, and only 32% think unfavorably about Medicaid. So it's terrible policy. It also may be terrible politics for the Republicans to embrace proposals like this.
And it's particularly terrible if you look at the map in states like Virginia, Wisconsin, and obviously important states for this election. Thank you so much, Steve Ratner at the Southwest Wall. They tell us that it's the Southwest Wall. Greatly appreciated.
All right, so that's how the mainstream media on the left is covering it. A lot of people are, that honestly, it didn't really sound like too crazy. It was just economic policy, which I'm not, obviously we're interested in it, but at the same time, I'm not gonna go into speculation on how this would actually work and be applied in the market, because that's not what this is about. So we're just trying to get through it really quickly.
Year in office, and Ronald Reagan did in his first year with respect to conservative agenda. In fact, the conservative group made this determination based on its own agenda, policy recommendations, of which President Trump embraced 64%. President Reagan embraced only 49%. So has President Trump become the new gold standard of?
So as you can see, they're claiming that Trump has embraced 64% of the Heritage Foundation recommendations. And this isn't, just to preface, this is not Trump's actual policy. This is a conservative think tank. Essentially, they put together a document that lays out what they would like to see in the government and whatnot. So it's not Trump's document. It's not something that he and his team masterminded or anything like that. This is something that is outside of him. Probably people that know him, brush shoulders with him. I mean, Trump is a really popular guy, right? At this point, I would even say he's the most popular man in the world, especially after that assassination attempt stunt that we also have broken down. Guys, if y'all have not watched my assassination attempt breakdown and my videos on Thomas Matthew Crooks, okay, you need to go and check it out. Let's see. We did a live stream 2 days ago on Thomas Matthew Crooks. The video is called Thomas Matthew Crooks Did Not Act Alone. Unknown ATF agent identified day after Michigan Trump rally. And then we did another one before that. Who is Thomas Matthew Crooks? BlackRock asset, patsy, or lone shooter and second shooter theory. So, guys, you really need to check that out. Very interesting stuff as it pertains to the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. So let's continue to break down this Heritage Foundation, because I don't want to make this stream about that. But if you haven't seen those videos, live streams, they're both about 3 hours each. You should check it out.
Conservatism. With me now to discuss Madison Jesse Otto, Washington Times columnist, also National Coalition for Trump advisor, and Tommy Binion, Heritage Foundation Congressional and Executive Branch Relations Director. Tommy, so Heritage Foundation has the mandate for leadership, 5 individual publications, 334 unique policy recommendations, and President Trump took up 64% of them in his budget. Does that make him the new gold standard of conservatism?
Absolutely. President Trump is a conservative president. And also, this analysis shows that he's a very active president. He's adopted many of these recommendations and pushed them forward and accomplished many of them. It's things like the Paris climate change agreement. It's things like repealing Barack Obama's net neutrality regulations. Those types of things, these are sort of under the radar accomplishments, under the radar policies that he's pursued. And yes, they're conservative. And yes, they're good for the country. And this analysis gives him credit for that.
You know, Madison, and a lot of the things that we have on the list there really angered the left progressives in the mainstream media, getting out of the Paris Climate Accord, repealing net neutrality. President Trump took a lot of heat of those.
Yeah, you know, Charles, what an incredible year for conservatives. And I imagine that we're going to have 3 to 7 more incredible years under President Trump. You know, a lot of people looking back were on the fence, conservatives specifically, concerned about some of the things that he said. But you cannot judge him by what he said, but by what he does. He's always been someone that planned to back up his words with actions. That's exactly what he did. We look at the Supreme Court. That's why a lot of people end up coming over the fence, jumping to the side and voting for him. And when he's talking about making an impact long term, let's look at the federal district courts and let's look at the federal appellate courts. I mean, this is places where he's going to have an effect long after his presidency is over in the world of conservatism.
Madison, do you think then that ultimately people should say, hey, forget about the rhetoric and the occasional tweet that may or be distasteful, if you will, and look at the achievements and the direction we're going? That ultimately is what matters.
Oh, absolutely. Because guess what? These words and silly tweets that people agree or disagree on and bicker about aren't going to affect people's lives. But these policies and these decisions that he's making in the Oval Office are going to affect our lives, not only now, like I said, but for decades to come. And so I think that's what people need to keep in mind. And I think that's what they will keep in mind when we go to the midterms in 2018 and we look at back, you know, to 2016. They were on the fence hoping this would happen, and it did happen. So I think they're going to do that in 2018 and 2020 as well.
Tommy, I know it's a badge of honor, but some people may say approximately 70 former Heritage employees either work for the Trump transition team or are now part of the administration. Is that too much influence by one particular organization?
No, I don't think so. That's absolutely a strategy of the Heritage Foundation to better the country. The individuals, the researchers, the smart people here at the Heritage Foundation have a passion for this country. They're patriots, and they went to work in the administration to make the country a better place. I don't think that's a knock against Heritage or too much influence at all. And yes, it's those 70 individuals and the president and the rest of his administration that enacted and adopted these policies. And we believe the reason we work here, the reason we work so hard on these policies is because we believe that ultimately they're going to deliver a better America for the American people.
Quickly, before I let you go, Tommy, is there one of the items that ranks high that wasn't adopted that you'd like to still see implemented? I know there's a lot of them, but the one that maybe sticks out the most to you.
Repeal and replace Obamacare. It's got to go. Healthcare is too expensive. That depends on the Congress. The president's leading on it, but it's got to happen.
Thank you both very, very much. Appreciate it. President Trump.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. All right. We're going to get into the document. I had to step away to make sure I had a full glass of water because this is a 922-page document. Now, obviously, we're not going to read all of it today. We're going to break this thing up in parts. Hopefully, we can get it all done this week. But I'm definitely going to need you guys' support. I'm going to need you guys to hit the Cash App, hit the PayPal. If you want to interject. But let's go ahead and get into it. Check out the merch store. We got Trump fight shirts on the merch store already. So those should be awesome for everybody to go check out. But here we go. Project 2025, Mandate for Leadership. The Conservative Promise, forward by Kevin Roberts, PhD, edited by Paul Dans and Stephen Groves. Now, I can't get into all the people who contributed to Project 2025. I really can't. So we're probably going to skip the personnel part of this, although it may be important. I might have to get it on another part, but part one, we're going to get mainly into the policy aspect of Project 2025, because that's what is most important. So hold on, let me see. Okay. I just want to make sure I was live streaming on Twitter. But this is the Mandate for Leadership. And if you guys are on Twitter, you can come to YouTube as well. The Conservative Promise. All right, so we got the contents, acknowledgments, the Project 2025 Advisory Board, that's personnel. 2025 Presidential Transition Project, a note on Project 2025. The authors, also personnel, contributors, forward, a promise to America. All right, section 1 is taking the reins of government. So that's what we're going to skip to section 1 on page 19. All right, because we want to get into the policy. Okay, this is still authors. Oh, I get it. So we got to go through all the Roman numerals first to get to the actual page 19. Okay. Here we go. Forward, a promise to America. A conservative promise, promise, restore the family. Okay, so these are the promises. And then let me just make sure and check page 19. All right, so here's the taking reins of government. The promise is about 20 pages. We can just knock this out really quickly, honestly, because I do want to give you guys an understanding of what their mission and vision is. I think it's important and pertinent to what we're talking about here with this document. But I really wanted to do this because I want people to be able to just listen up. I will give some commentary, especially if you guys donate to the channel. on the Cash App and the PayPal, which I will place the banner here so you can donate to the Cash App and the PayPal. The banner down below shows where you can donate. But I want to read through it. I do want to give some commentary, not too much though, because I want people to be able to just sit here and listen to me read this document. So, A Promise to America. All right. 44 years ago, the United States and the conservative movement were in dire straits. Both had been betrayed by the Washington establishment and were uncertain whom to trust. Both were internally splintered and strategically adrift. Worse still, at the moment of acute vulnerability and division, we found ourselves besieged by existential adversaries, foreign and domestic. The late 1970s were by any measures a historic low point for America and the political coalition dedicated to preserving its unique legacy of human flourishing and freedom. Today, America and the conservative movement are enduring an era of division and danger akin to the late 1970s. Now, as then, our political class has been desecrated by wholesale dishonesty and corruption. Look at America under the ruling and cultural elite today. Inflation is ravaging families' budgets. Drug overdose deaths continue to escalate, and children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism, with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. Overseas, a totalitarian communist dictatorship in Beijing is engaged in a strategic, cultural, and economic Cold War against America's interests, values, and people, all while globalist elites in Washington awaken only slowly to that growing threat. Moreover, low-income communities are drowning in addiction and government dependence. Contemporary elites have even repurposed the worst ingredients of the 1970s radical chick to build a totalitarian cult known today as the Great Awakening. And now, as then, the Republican Party seems to have little understanding about what to do. Most alarming of all, the very moral foundations of our society are in peril. Yet students of history will note that notwithstanding all the challenges, the late 1970s proved to be the moment when the political right unified itself and the country and led the United States to historic political, economic, and global victories. The Heritage Foundation is proud to have played a small but pivotal role in this story. It was in early 1979, amid stagflation, gas lines, and the Red Army's invasion of Afghanistan, the nadir of Jimmy Carter's days of malaise, that Heritage launched the mandate of Leadership Project. We brought together hundreds of conservative scholars and academics across the conservative movement. Together, this team created a 20-volume, 3,000-page governing handbook containing more than 2,000 conservative policies to reform the federal government and rescue the American people from the Washington dysfunction. It was a promise from the conservative movement to the country, confident, specific, and clear. Mandate for Leadership was published in January 1981. The same month, Ronald Reagan was sworn into his presidency. By the end of the year, more than 60% of its recommendations had become policy, and Reagan was on his way to ending stagflation, reviving American confidence and prosperity, and winning the Cold War. The bad news today is that our political establishment and cultural elite have once again driven America toward decline. The good news is that we know the way out, even though the challenges today are not what they were in the 1970s. Conservatives should be confident that we can rescue our kids, reclaim our culture, revive our economy, and defeat the anti-American left at home and abroad. We did it before, and we will do it again. As Ronald Reagan put it, freedom is fragile. Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation. This is the duty history has put before us and the standard by which our generation of conservatives will be judged, and we should not want it any other way. The legacy of Mandate for Leadership, and indeed of the entire Reagan revolution, is that if conservatives want to save the country, we need a bold and courageous plan. This book is the first step in the plan, The Conservative Promise. Okay. This volume, The Conservative Promise, is the opening salvo of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project launched by the Heritage Foundation and our many partners in April 2022. Its 30 chapters lay out hundreds of clear and concrete policy recommendations for White House offices, cabinets, departments, Congress, and agencies, commissions, and boards. Just as important as the scope of the Conservative Promises recommendation is the breadth of its authorship. This book is the product of more than 400 scholars. More than 400 scholars and policy experts from across the conservative movement and around the country. Contributors include former elected officials, world-renowned economists, and veterans from 4 presidential administrations. This is an agenda prepared by and for conservatives who will be ready on day 1 of the next administration to save our country from the brink of disaster. The Heritage Foundation is once again facilitating this work, but as our dozens of partners and hundreds of authors will attest, this book is the work of the entire conservative movement. As such, the authors express consensus recommendations already forged, especially along 4 broad fronts that will decide America's future. Restore the family of the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. 2, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. 3, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. 4, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessing of liberty. What makes these 4 pieces of the conservative promise so valuable to the next president is that they cut through superficial distractions and focus on the moral and foundational challenges America faces in the moment of history. This was one of the secrets of conservatives' success in the Reagan era. One our generation should emulate. As in the late 1970s, Americans today experience the failures of political and cultural elite in countless ways, in the job market and in the grocery store checkout lines, on the streets and in our schools, in the media and within our institutions. But in truth, these daily dysfunctions are not innumerable problems, but innumerable manifestations of a few core crises. In 1979, the threats we faced were the Soviet Union, the socialism of 1970s liberals, and the predatory deviancy of cultural elites. Reagan defeated these beasts by ignoring their tentacles and striking instead at their hearts. His approach to the Cold War: we win and they lose. His economic agenda: the human dignity of work and its many rewards. His platform in the culture wars: the community of values embodied in these words: family, work, neighborhood, peace, and freedom. This book and Project 2025 as a whole will arm the next conservative president with the same kind of strategic clarity before a new age. Promise number 1, restore the family as a centerpiece of American life and protect our children. The next conservative president must get to work pursuing the true priority of politics, the well-being of the American family. In many ways, the entire point of centralizing political power is to subvert the family. Its purpose is to replace people's natural loves and loyalties with unnatural ones. You see this in the popular left-wing aphorisms. Government is simply the name we give to the things we choose to do together. But in real life, most of the things people do together have nothing to do with the government. These are the mediating institutions that serve as the building blocks of any healthy society: marriage, family, work, church, school, volunteering. The name real people give to the things we do together is community, not government. Our lives are full of interwoven, overlapping communities, and our individual and collective happiness depends upon them. But the most important community in each of our lives and the life of the nation is the family. Today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of Black children. There's a fact that we already know, right? There is no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father. Fatherlessness is one of the principal sources of American poverty, crime, mental illness, teen suicide, substance abuse, rejection of the church, and high school dropouts. So many of these problems government programs are designed to solve, but can't, are ultimately problems created by the crisis of marriage and the family. The world has never seen a thriving, healthy, free, and prosperous society where most children grow up without their married parents. If current trends continue, we are heading towards social implosion. Furthermore, the next conservative president must understand that using government only to respond to symptoms of the family crisis is a dead end. Federal power must instead be wielded to reverse the crisis and rescue America's kids from the familial breakdown. The conservative promise includes dozens of specific policies to accomplish this existential task. Some are obvious and long-standing goals, like eliminating marriage penalties and federal welfare programs in the tax code and installing work requirements for food stamps. But we must go further. It's time for policymakers to evaluate or elevate family authority, formation, and cohesion as their top priority, and even use government power, including through the tax code, to restore the American family. Today, the left is threatening the tax exempt status of churches and charities that reject woke progressivism. They will soon turn to Christian schools and clubs with that same totalitarian intent. The next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency, regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. Pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children, for instance, is not a political Gordian knot inextricably binding up disparate claims about free speech, prosperity rights, sexual liberation, and child welfare. It has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as an illicit drug and psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders, and telecommunication and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. In our schools, the question of parental authority over their children's education is a simple one. Schools serve parents, not the other way around. That is, of course, the best argument for universal school choice, a goal all conservative and conservative presidents must pursue. But even before we achieve that long-term goal, parents' rights as their children's primary educators should be non-negotiable in American schools. States, cities, and counties school boards, union bosses, principals, and teachers who disagree should be immediately cut off from federal funds. The noxious tenets of critical race theory and gender ideology should be excised from curricula in every public school in the country. These theories poison our children, who are being taught on the one hand to affirm that the color of their skin fundamentally determines their identity and even their moral status, while on the other, they are taught to deny their very creaturelessness that inheres in being human and consists in accepting the givenness of our nature as men and women. Allowing parents or physicians to reassign the sex of minor is child abuse and must end. For public institutions to use taxpayer dollars to declare the superiority or inferiority of certain races, sexes, and religions is a violation of the Constitution and civil rights laws and cannot be tolerated by any government anywhere in the country. But the pro-family promises expressed in this book and central to the next conservative president's agenda must go much further than the traditional narrow definition of family issues. Every threat to family stability must be confronted. This resolve should color each of our policies. Consider our approach to big tech. The worst of these companies prey on children like drug dealers to get them addicted to their mobile apps. Many Silicon Valley executives famously don't let their children have smartphones. They nevertheless make billions of dollars addicting other people's children to theirs. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms are specifically designed to create the digital dependence that fuel mental illness and anxiety, to fray children's bonds with their parents and siblings. Federal policy cannot allow this industrial scale child abuse to continue. Finally, conservatives should gratefully celebrate the greatest pro-family win in a generation, overturning Roe v. Wade, a decision that for 5 decades made a mockery of our Constitution and facilitated the death of tens of millions of unborn children. But the Dobbs decision is just the beginning. Conservatives in the states and in Washington, including in the next conservative administration, should push as hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. In particular, the next conservative president should work with Congress to enact the most robust protections for the unborn that Congress will support, while deploying existing federal powers to protect innocent life and vigorously complying with statutory bans on the federal funding of abortion. Conservatives should ardently pursue these pro-life and pro-family policies while recognizing the many women who find themselves in immensely difficult and often tragic situations as the heroism of every choice to become a mother. Alternative options to abort, especially adoption, should receive federal and state support. In summary, the next president has a moral responsibility to lead the nation in restoring a culture of life in America again. All right, let me take a sip. Promise number 2, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Of course, the surest way to put the federal government back to work for the American people is to reduce its size and scope back to something resembling the original constitutional intent. Conservatives desire a smaller government, not for its own sake, but for the sake of human flourishing. But the Washington establishment doesn't want a constitutionally limited government because it means they lose power and are held more accountable by the people who put them in power. Like restoring popular sovereignty, the task of reattaching the federal government's constitutional and democratic tethers calls to mind Ronald Reagan's observation that there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. In the case of making the federal government smaller, more effective, and accountable, the simple answer is the Constitution itself. The surest proof of this is how strenuously and creatively generations of progressives and many Republican insiders have worked to cut themselves free from the strictures of the 1789 Constitution and subsequent amendments. Consider the federal budget. Under current law, Congress is required to pass a budget and 12 issue specific spending bills comporting with it every single year. The last time Congress did so was in 1996. Congress no longer meaningfully budgets, authorizes, or categorizes spending. Instead, party leaders negotiate one multi-trillion-dollar spending bill several thousand pages long and then vote on it before anyone literally has a chance to read it. Debate time is restricted, amendments are prohibited, and all of this is backed up against a midnight deadline when the previous omnibus spending bill will run out and the federal government shuts down. This process is not designed to empower 330 million American citizens and their elected representatives, but rather to empower the party elites secretly negotiating without any public scrutiny or oversight. In the end, congressional leaders' behavior and incentives here are no different from those of global elites, insulating policy decisions over the climate, trade, public health, you name it, from the sovereignty of national electorates. Public scrutiny and democratic accountability make life harder for policymakers, so they skirt it. It's not dysfunction, it's corruption. And despite its gaudy price tag, the federal budget is not even close to the worst example of this corruption. That distinction belongs to the administrative state, the dismantling of which must a top priority for the next conservative president. The term administrative state refers to the policy-making work done by the bureaucracies of all the federal governments, the departments, agencies, and millions of employees. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. This is federal law. Federal law is enacted only by elected legislators in both houses of Congress. This exclusive authority was part of the framers' doctrine of separated powers. They not only split the federal government legislative, executive, and judicial powers into 3 different branches, they also gave each branch checks over the others. Under our Constitution, the legislative branch, Congress, is far away the most powerful and correspondingly the most accountable to the people. In recent decades, members of the House and Senate discovered that if they give away the power of the Article 2 branch of government, they can also deny responsibility for its actions. So today in Washington, most policy is no longer set by Congress at all, but by the administrative state. Given the choice between being powerful but vulnerable or irrelevant but famous, most members of Congress have chosen the latter. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. That agency's bureaucrats, not just unelected, but seemingly unfireable, then leap at the chance to fill the vacuum created by Congress, preening cowardice. the federal government is growing larger and less constitutionally accountable even to the president every year. A combination of elected and unelected bureaucrats at the Environmental Protection Agency quietly strangles domestic energy production through difficult to understand rulemaking processes. Bureaucrats at the Department of Homeland Security, following the lead of a feckless administration, order border and immigration enforcement agencies to help migrants criminally enter our country with impunity. Bureaucrats at the Department of Education inject racist, anti-American, ahistorical propaganda into America's classroom. Bureaucrats at the Department of Justice force school districts to undermine girls' sports and parents' rights to satisfy transgender extremists. Woke bureaucrats at the Pentagon force troops to attend training seminars about white privilege, and bureaucrats at the State Department infuse U.S. foreign and programs with woke extremism about intersectionality and abortion. Unaccountable federal spending is the secret lifeblood of the Great Awakening. Nearly every power center held by the Great Awakening. Nearly every power center held by the left is funded or supported one way or another through the bureaucracy by Congress. Colleges and school districts are funded by tax dollars. The administrative state holds 100% of its power at the sufferance of Congress, and its insulation from presidential discipline is an unconstitutional fairy tale spun by the Washington establishment to protect its turf. Members of Congress shield themselves from constitutional accountability, often when the White House allows them to get away with it. Cultural institutions like public libraries and public health agencies are only as independent from public accountability as elected officials and voters permit. Let's be clear, the most egregious regulations promulgated by the current administration come from one place, the Oval Office. The president cannot hide behind the agencies, as his many executive orders make clear. His is the responsibility of the regulations that threaten American communities, schools, and families. A conservative president must move swiftly to do away with these vast abuses of presidential power and remove the career and political bureaucrats who fuel it. Properly considering restoring fiscal limits and constitutional accountability to the federal government is a continuation of restoring national sovereignty to restoring national sovereignty to the American people. In foreign affairs, global strategy, federal budgeting, and policy making, the same pattern emerges again and again. Ruling elites slash and tear at restrictions and accountability placed on them. They centralize power up and away from the American people to supranational treaties and organizations, to left-wing experts, to cite unseen all or nothing legislating, to the unelected career bureaucrats of the administrative state. Oh, shit. Why am I sinking in my chair? All right. Honestly, I mean, so far, guys, so far I'm rocking with Project 25. Now, this is just their way forward, their mission and vision. We haven't really gotten to the actual policy, but so far, Project 2025 is looking real nice. As monolithic as the left's institutional power appears to be, it originates with appropriations from Congress and is made completely by a feckless president. A conservative president must look to the legislative branch for decisive action. The administrative state is not going anywhere until Congress acts to retrieve its own power from bureaucrats in the White House. But in the meantime, there are many executive tools a courageous conservative president can use to handcuff the bureaucracy, push Congress to return to its return to its constitutional responsibility, restore power over Washington to the American people, bring the administrative state to heel, and in the process, defang and defund the woke culture wars or warriors who have infiltrated every last institution in America. And that is a fact. These homosexuals in the government have taken over. The conservative promise lays out how to use many of these tools, including how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaucrats and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. Finally, the president can restore public confidence and accountability to our most important government functions of all, national defense. The American people desire a military full of highly skilled servicemen and women who can protect the homeland and our interests overseas. The next conservative president must end the left's social experimentation with the military, restore warfighting as its sole mission, and set defeating the threat of the Chinese Communist Party as its highest priority. The next conservative president must possess the courage of relentlessly put the interests of the everyday American over the desires of the ruling elite. Their outrage cannot be prevented. It must simply be ignored, and it can be. The left derives its power from the institutions they control, but those institutions are only powerful to the extent that constitutional offices surrender their own legitimate authority to them. A president who refuses to do so and uses his or her office to reimpose constitutional authority over federal policy making can begin to correct decades of corruption and remove the thousands of bureaucrats from the positions of public trust they have so long abused. Let me take a sip. Promise number 3. Let's get it. Promise number 3, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. The United States belongs to we, the people. All government authority derives from the consent of the people, and our nation's success derives from the character of its people. The American people's right to rule ourselves in the averse of our duty. We cannot outsource to others our obligation to ensure the conditions that allow our families, local communities, churches, and synagogues, and neighborhoods to thrive. The buck stops with each of us, so each of us must have the freedom to pursue the good for ourselves and those entrusted to our care. To most Americans, this is common sense, but in Washington, D.C. and other centers of leftist power like the media and the academy, this statement of basic civics is branded hate speech. Progressive elites speak in lofty terms of openness, progressive expertise, cooperation, and globalization. But too often these terms are just rhetorical Trojan horses, concealing their true intentions, stripping we the people of our constitutional authority over our country's future. America's corporate and political elites do not believe in the ideals to which our nation is dedicated: self-governance, the rule of law, and ordered liberty. They certainly do not trust the American people, and they disdain the Constitution's restrictions on their ambitions. Instead, they believe in a kind of 21st century Wilsonian order in which the enlightened, highly educated managerial elites run things rather than the humble, patriotic, hardworking families who make up the majority of what the elites contemptuously call flyover country. This Wilsonian hubris has spread like a cancer through many of America's largest corporations, its public institution, and its popular culture. Those who run our so-called American corporations have bent to the will of the woke agenda and care more of their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers. Today, nearly every top-tier U.S. university president or Wall Street hedge fund manager has more in common with a socialist European head of state than with the parents at a high school football game in Waco, Texas. Many elites' entire identity, it seems, is wrapped up in their sense of superiority over those people. But under our Constitution, they are mere equals of the workers who show after work instead of before, or shower after work instead of before. Sorry. This is as it should and must be. Intellectual sophistication, advanced degrees, financial success, and all other markers of elite status have no bearing on a person's knowledge of the one thing most necessary for governance: what it means to live well. That knowledge is available to each of us, no matter how humble our backgrounds or how unpretentious our attainments. It is open to us to read in the book of human nature, to which we are all offered the key just by merit of our shared humanity. One of the great premises of American political life is that everyone who can read in the book must have a voice in deciding the course and the fate of our republic. Progressive policymakers and pundits in America either fail to understand this premise of intentionality, reject it. They enthusiastically support supranational organizations like the United Nations and European Union, which are run and staffed almost entirely by people who share their values and are mostly insulated from the influence of national elections. It sounded like I said natural selection. That's why they are eager for America to sign international treaties on everything from pharmaceutical patents to climate change to the right of the child, and why those treaties invariably endorse policies that could never pass through the U.S. Congress, like the progressive Woodrow Wilson a century ago. The woke left today seeks a world bound by global treaties they write, in which they exercise dictatorial powers over all nations without being subject to democratic accountability. That's why today's progressive left so cavalierly supports open borders despite the lawless humanitarian crisis their policy created along American southern border. They seek to purge the very concept of the nation state from the American ethos, no matter how much crime increases or resources drop from our schools and hospitals or wages decrease for the working class. Open borders activism is a classic example of what the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer called cheap grace. Publicly promoting one's own virtue without risking any personal inconvenience. Indeed, the only direct impact to open borders or pro-open borders elites is that the constant flow of illegal immigration suppresses the wages of their housekeepers, landscapers, and busboys. Cheap grace aptly describes the left's love affair with the environmental extremism. Those who suffer most from the policies environmentalism would have us enact are the good people and vulnerable. It is not a political cause, but a pseudo-religion meant to baptize liberals' ruthless pursuit of absolute power in the holy water of environmental virtue. At its very heart, environmental extremism is decidedly anti-human. Stewardship and conservation are supplanted by population control and economic regression. Environmental ideologues would ban the fuels that run almost all of the world's cars, planes, factories, farms, and electricity grids, abandoning confidence in human resilience and creativity in responding to the challenges of the future would raise impediments to the most meaningful human activities. They would stand human affairs on their head regarding human activity itself as fundamentally a threat to be sacrificed to God or to the God of nature. The same goals are the heart of elite support for economic globalization. For 30 years, America's political, economic, and cultural leaders embraced and enriched communist China and its genocidal Communist Party while hollowing out America's industrial base. What may have started out with good intentions has now been made clear. Unfettered trade with China has been a catastrophe. It has made a handful of American corporations enormously profitable while twisting their business incentives away from the American people's needs. For a generation, politicians of both parties promised that the engagement with Beijing would grow our economy while injecting American values into China. The opposite has happened. American factories have closed, jobs have been outsourced, our manufacturing economy has been financialized. And all along, the corporations profiting failed to export our values of human rights and freedom. Rather, they imported China's anti-American values into their C-suites. Even before the rise of big tech, Wall Street ignored China's serial theft of American intellectual property. It outright cheered the elimination of American manufacturing jobs. Learn to code, they would gloat. These were just the price of progress. Engagement was at every step Beijing's project, not America's. The Chinese Communist Party dictated terms only to break them whenever it suited them. They stole our technology, spied on our people, and threatened our allies, all with trillions of dollars of wealth and military power financed by their access to our market. Then came the rise of big tech, which is now less a contributor to the U.S. economy than it is a tool of China's government. In exchange for cheap labor and regulatory special treatments from Beijing, America's largest technology firms funnel data about Americans to the CCP. They hand over sensitive intellectual property with military and intelligence applications to keep the money rolling in. They let Beijing censor Chinese users on their platform. They let the CCP set their corporate policies about mobile apps. And they run interference for our rivals' political priorities in Washington. One side of big tech companies' business model is old-fashioned American competitiveness and world-changing technological innovation. But increasingly, that side of these businesses is overshadowed by their role as operatives in the lucrative and the lucrative employ of America's most dangerous international enemy. If you want to understand the danger posed by collaboration between big tech and the CCP, look no further than TikTok. The highly addictive video app used by 80 million Americans every month and overwhelmingly popular among teenage girls is in effect a tool of Chinese espionage. The ties between TikTok and the Chinese government are not loose, and they are not coincidental. The same can be observed of many U.S. colleagues in universities. Through the CCP's Confucius Institutes, Beijing has been just as successful as compromising and co-opting our higher education system as they have at compromising the co-opting corporate America. A casual reader might take the last few pages as surveying a broad array of challenges facing the American people and the next conservative president. Supranational policymaking, border security, globalization, engagement with China, manufacturing, big tech, and Beijing compromised colleagues. But these really are not many issues, but two, that China is the totalitarian enemy of the United States, not a strategic partner of fair competitor. And two, America's elite have betrayed the American people. The solution to all the above problems is not to tinker with this or that government program to replace this or that bureaucrat. These are problems not of technocratic efficiency, but of national sovereignty and constitutional governance. We solve them not by trimming and reshaping the leaves, but by ripping out the trees, root and branch. International organizations and agreements that erode our constitution, rule of law, or popular sovereignty should not be reformed. They should be abandoned. Illegal immigration should be ended, not mitigated. The border sealed, not reprioritized. Economic engagement with China should be ended, not rethought. Our manufacturing and industrial base should be restored and not allowed to deteriorate further. Confucius Institute, TikTok, and any other arm of Chinese propaganda and espionage should be outlawed, not merely monitored. Universities taking money from the CCP should lose their accreditation charters and eligibility for federal funds. The next conservative president should go beyond merely defending America's energy interests, but go on offense, asserting them around the world. America's vast reserves of oil and natural gas are not an environmental problem. They are the lifeblood of economic growth. American dominance of the global energy market would be a good thing for the world and, more importantly, for we the people. It's not just about jobs, even though unleashing domestic energy production would create millions of them. It's not just about higher wages for workers who didn't go to college, though they would receive the raises they have missed out on for 2 generations. Full spectrum strategic energy dominance could facilitate the reinvigoration of America's entire industrial and manufacturing sector as we disentangle our economy from China. Globally, it would rebalance power away from dangerous regimes in Russia and the Middle East. It would build powerful alliances with fast-growing nations in Africa and provide us the leverage to counter Chinese ambitions in South America and the Pacific. Locally, it would drive billions of dollars of private investment to the communities that have been harmed by globalization since the 1990s, and it would clarify our intentions to Beijing that the next president can ensure that a large part of America's reindustrialization is in the production of the equipment we will need to dissuade future foreign meddling with U.S. vital interests. So far, sounding really good. With the TikTok ban, here's the thing about the TikTok ban. I get the CCP has control. I do agree that it needs to be they're doing a lot of data mining. They're spying on U.S. citizens. TikTok is not good, although I do use the app. They censor conservative voices on TikTok as well. So it's not a good app. It can be effective. It can be, but at the end of the day, it isn't a net positive. Instead of a ban, I would just say that there needs to be some regulations as far as what social media companies can and can't do. It needs to be a free source type thing. They can't just censor and ban people for no reason, and unless they're inciting violence, and just make it really loose for what they can do. And then also, when it comes to spying, obviously they shouldn't be allowed to do that either. So just outlaw those aspects of it. I do have a problem with China controlling that huge app. And there's a lot of Americans who, I think 20 million Americans who are making, like at least 2,000 a month on TikTok. So that would definitely devastate them if TikTok was taken out. But I do think there definitely needs to be some regulations on social media companies, and not regulations to censor speech, but open it up for free speech and let the best ideas win. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Promise number 4, secure our God-given individual right to enjoy the blessings of liberty. The Declaration of Independence famously asserted that belief of America's founders that all men are created equal and endowed with God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's the pursuit of happiness, that is central to America's heroic experimentation in self-government. When the founders spoke of the pursuit of happiness, what they meant might be understood today as an essence pursuit of blessedness. That is, an individual must be free to live as his creator ordained to flourish. Our Constitution grants each of us the liberty to do what we want, but not what we want, but what we ought. This pursuit of the good life is found primarily in family, marriage, children, Thanksgiving dinners, and the like. Many find happiness through their work. Think of dedicated teachers or healthcare professionals, entrepreneurs or plumbers throwing themselves into their business. Anyone who sees a job well done as a personal reward. Religious devotion and spirituality are the greatest sources of happiness around the world. Still others find themselves happiest in their local voluntary communities of friends, their neighbors, their civic or charitable work. The American Republic was founded on principles prioritizing and maximizing individuals' rights to live their best life or to enjoy what the framers called the blessings of liberty. It's the radical equality, liberty for all, not just of rights, but of authority, that the rich and powerful have hated about democracy in America since 1776. They resent Americans' audacity in insisting that we don't need them to tell us how to live. It's this inalienable right of self-direction of each person's opportunity to direct himself or herself and his or her community to the good that the ruling class disdains. With the Declaration and Constitution, our nation's founders handed to us the means with which to preserve this right. Abraham Lincoln wrote of the Declaration as an apple of gold in a silver frame, the Constitution. So must the next conservative president look to these documents when the elites mount their next assault on liberty. Sorry, I butchered that passage. Left to our own devices, the American people rejected European monarchy and colonialism, just as we rejected slavery, second-class citizenship for women, mercantilism, socialism, Wilsonian globalism, fascism, communism, and today's wokeism. To the left, these assertions of patriotic self-assurance are just so many signs of our moral depravity and intellectual inferiority, proof that, in fact, we need a ruling elite making decisions for us. But the next conservative president should be proud, not ashamed of Americans' unique culture of social equality and ordered liberty. After all, the countries where Marxist elites have won political and economic power are all weaker, poorer, and less free for it. The United States remains the most innovative and upwardly mobile society in the world. Government should stop trying to substitute its own preferences for those of the people. And the next conservative president should champion the dynamic genius of free enterprise against the grim miseries of elite-directed socialism. The promise of socialism, communism, Marxism, progressivism, fascism, whatever name it chooses, is simple. Government control of the economy can ensure equal outcomes for all people. The problem is that it has never done so. There is no such thing as the government. There are just people who work for the government and wield its power, and who at almost every opportunity wield it to serve themselves first and everyone else as distant second. This is not a failing of one nation or socialist party, but inherent in human nature. All right. Nighttime satellite images of the Korean Peninsula famously show the free market south lit up with homes, businesses, and cities electrified from coast to coast. By contrast, communist North Korea is almost completely dark, except for the small dot of the capital city, Pyongyang, where a psychotic dictator and his cronies live. The same phenomenon is on display in the infuriating fact that 4 of the 6 richest counties in the United States are suburbs of Washington, D.C., a city infamous for its lack of native productive industries. We see the same corruption expressed on an individual level whenever billionaire climate activists who want to outlaw carbon-fueled transportation fly to A-list conferences on their private jets, or when COVID-19 shut down politicians like former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and California Governor Gavin Newsom were caught at their hair salon or dining at fancy restaurants after moralizing about how everyone else must stay home and forego such luxuries during the pandemic. For socialists who are almost always well-to-do, socialism is not a means of equalizing outcomes, but a means of accumulating power. They never get around to helping anyone else. The Soviet Empire has a social and economic failure. North Korea, despite the opulence of its tyrants, is one of the poorest nations in the world. Cuba is so corrupt that its people regularly risk their lives to escape to Florida on rafts. Venezuela was once the richest nation in South America. Today, a decade after a Marxist dictator took over, 94% of Venezuelans live in poverty. Even Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders' home state of Vermont was forced to repeal the state's single-payer health care system just 3 years after creating it. In every case, socialist elites promised that if only they could direct the economy, everything would be better. Very quickly, everything got worse. In socialist nation after socialist nation, the only way the government could keep its disgruntled people in line was to surveil and terrorize them. By contrast, in countries with a high degree of economic freedom, elites are not in charge because everyone is in charge. People work, build, invest, save, and create according to their own interests and in service to the common good of their fellow citizens. There is a reason why the private economy hews to the maxim, the customer is always right, while government bureaucracies notoriously user unfriendly, just as there is a reason why private charities are cheerful and government welfare systems are not. It's not because grocery store clerks and PTA moms are good and federal bureaucrats are, quote, bad. It's because private enterprise for profit or nonprofit must cooperate to succeed. So as the American people take back their sovereignty, unconstitutional authority, respect for their families and communities, they should also take back the right to pursue the good life. The next president should promote pro-growth economic policies that spur new jobs and invest higher wages and productivity. Yes, the agenda should include overdue tax and regulatory reform, but it should go further and include antitrust and enforcement against corporate monopolies. It should promote educational opportunities outside the woke-dominated system of public schools and universities, including trade school, apprenticeship programs, and student loan alternatives that fund students' dreams instead of Marxist academics. Just as important as expanding opportunities for workers and small businesses, the next president should crack down on the crony capitalist corruption that enables America's largest corporation to profit through political influence rather than competitive enterprise and customer satisfaction. Analogous pro-growth reforms for America's voluntary civil society are also in order. America is not an economy, it is a country. Economic freedom is not the only important freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom to assemble also represent key components of the American promise. Today, in addition to the promise of big tech censorship, we see speakers at universities shouted down, parents investigated and arrested for attempting to speak at school board meetings, and donors to conservative causes harassed and intimidated. The next conservative president must defend our First Amendment rights. Okay. Still have yet to run into right-wing extremism. I haven't seen anything really radical. Obviously, our Congress was talking about a TikTok ban. So that was the only thing I disagreed with. I don't think it should be banned. I think it should be regulated, and any foreign business or foreign entity should have more regulations than the American people. I agree with that. Like, why are we being regulated more in these foreign companies? So it should be regulated. They shouldn't be able to censor and shadow ban and do all that kind of stuff. And they shouldn't be able to promote certain things to, with their algorithm. But as long as they abide by certain guidelines, then I don't see a huge issue with that. But the algorithm definitely needs to be released. It needs to be up to the people to decide what content creators are good and what are bad, and not just like it's so superficially run. TikTok is, where I mean, these weirdos become popular, and then when you do start becoming popular with conservative views, they are quick to censor you. There's videos on YouTube all over the place about TikTok censoring Christian content. So this is a real thing. All right, best effort. Ultimately, the left does not believe that all men are created equal. They think they are special. They certainly don't think all people have an unalienable right to pursue the good life. They think only they themselves have such a right, along with a moral responsibility to make decisions for everyone else. They don't think any citizen, state, business, church, or charity should be allowed any freedom until they first bend the knee. This book, this agenda, the entire Project 2025 is a plan to unite the conservative movement and the American people against elite rule and woke culture warriors. Our movement has not been united in recent years, and our country has paid the price. In the past decade, though, the breakdown of the family, the rise of China, the Great Awakening, big tech's abuses, and the erosion of the constitutional accountability in Washington have rendered these divisions not just inconvenient, but politically suicidal. Every hour, the left directs federal policy and elite institutions. Our sovereignty, our Constitution, our families, and our freedom are a step closer to disappearing. Conservatives have just 2 years and one shot to get this right. With enemies at home and abroad, there is no margin for error. Time is running short. If we fail, the fight for the very idea of America may be lost. But we should take this small window of opportunity we have left to act with courage and confidence, not despair. The last time our nation and movement were so near defeat, we rallied together behind a great leader, and great ideas transcended our differences, rescued our nation, and changed the world. It's time to do it again. Now, as then, we know who we are fighting and what we are fighting for our republic, our freedom, and for each other. The next conservative president will enter office on January 20th, 2025 with a simple choice: greatness or failure. It will be a daunting test, but no more so than every generation of Americans has faced in past. The conservative promise represents the best effort of the conservative movement in 2023 and the next conservative president's last opportunity to save our republic. So that was the forward. I don't see any problem with that. I'm rocking with 2025 so far. I'm rocking with P2025 so far. And Trump distanced himself at his last rally in Grand Rapids from 2025, Project 2025. And, it could have been a political decision. It could have been that he went over the document, or maybe people in his ear telling him something that it's not. But I know for a fact that people on Twitter have not read the document, have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. And all they do is just watch mainstream media, and the mainstream media is telling them shit. So I'm not mad at Project 2025 so far. All right, let's see. This is section 1. I just want to make sure. Okay, so they're talking about the cabinet. All right. This is going to be interesting. Guys, make sure you hit that Cash App. Make sure you hit that PayPal. Lord have mercy. I know nobody has ever read this live stream straight through. We are going to have to take a quick break here because I do have to take my dog out. He's whining. So I will take the dog out. And then once we do that, we will come right back and read section 1 of Project 2025. So far, so good. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section.
Yo, what's good, BGZM News 17 family? I'm at the corner of Jesse Jackson and Marcus Garvey, and I got some bad news for you. As you can see, I lost my job. I'm out here living in cardboard boxes outside of boarded up vacant homes. YouTube said I'm done getting money out here in these streets. They even took my funky ass suit. So anything right now would help. So go ahead, and hit that Cash App, hit that PayPal, hit that GoFundMe. Hell, cop the merch. Or if you want to make the long-term commitment to the Jinquavius Jackson Fund, join the Patreon so that I can continue to put out top-notch content each and every day. Also, check out the Rumble, where there is absolutely no censorship. Link in the description box below.
Hey, yo, ain't that nigga Jinquavius? Yo, I recognize.
No, that's not me no more.
Hey, yo, run your pocket.
Y'all tell me what they say.
Do the opposite of Antonio Brown and take
What
all your
more
shit
do
off.
you want from me?
What's good, Shadow Realm? It's your boy Jinquavius Jackson, and y'all already know I'm demonetized and shadow banned in this bitch. So if you want to contribute, go to the Cash App, the PayPal, the GoFundMe, or join the Patreon. Also, don't forget to visit the merch store for all your favorite BGZM News 17 gear, including our exclusive Trump is a Blood t-shirt. Go fast before they sell out. They are already flying off the shelves, no cap. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time. All right, guys, let's get into section 1 of Project 2025. So far, so good. I don't severely disagree with anything proposed so far. So this thing is not turning out to be as bad as the left has described it to be. Let's make these letters big so I can read this thing. All right. Taking the reins of the government. America's bicentennial, which culminated on July 4th, 1976, was a spirited and unifying celebration of our country, its founding, and its ideals. As we approach our nation's 250th anniversary, which will take place during the next presidency, America is now divided between two opposing forces: woke revolutionaries and those who believe in the ideals of the American Revolution. The former believe that America is and always has been systemically racist, and that it is not worth celebrating and must be fundamentally transformed, largely through a centralized administrative state. The latter believe in America's history and heroes, its principles and promise, and its everyday Americans and the American way of life. They believe in the Constitution and Republican government. Conservatives, the Americanists in the battle, must fight for the soul of America, which is very much at stake. Just 2 years after the death of the surviving Constitutional Convention delegate James Madison, Abraham Lincoln warned that the greatest threat to America would come not from without, but from within. This is evident today, whether it be mask and vaccine mandates, school and business closures, efforts to keep Americans from driving gas cars or using gas stoves, or efforts to defund the police, indoctrinate school children, alter beloved books, abridge free speech, undermine the colorblind ideal, or deny the biological reality that there are only two sexes. The left's steady stream of insanity appears to be never ending. The next administration must stand up for American ideals, American families, and American culture, all things in which, thankfully, most Americans still believe. Highlighting this need, former director of the Office of Management and Budget, Ross Vaught, writes in Chapter 2, the modern conservative president task is to limit control and direct the executive branch on behalf of the American people. At the core of this goal is the work of the White House and the central personnel agencies. Article 2 of the Constitution vests all federal executive power in a president made accountable to the citizenry through regular elections. Our founders wrote, the executive power shall be vested in the president of the United States of America. Accordingly, Vaught writes, it is the president's agenda that should matter to the department and agencies, not their own. Yet the federal bureaucracy has a mind of its own. Federal employees are often ideologically aligned, not with the majority of the American people, but with one another, posing a profound problem for Republican government, a government of by and for the people. As Donald Devine, Dennis Kirk, and Paul Dans writes in Chapter 3, an autonomous bureaucracy has neither independent constitutional status nor separate moral legitimacy. Byzantine personal rules provide the bureaucrats with their chief means of self-protection. What's more, knowledge of such rules is used to thwart the president's appointees and agenda. As Divine Kirk and Dan's write, managing the immense bureaucracy of the federal government is impossible without an understanding of the key central personnel agencies and their governing laws and regulations. Many of these laws and regulations governing a large, underworked, overcompensated, and unaccountable federal civilian workforce are so irrational that they would be comical in less important contexts. This is true whether it comes to evaluating employees' performance or hiring new employees. Only in the federal government could an applicant in the hiring process be sent to the front of the line because of history of drug addiction or alcoholism, or due to morbid obesity, irritable bowel syndrome, or a psychiatric disorder. The next administration should insist that the federal government's hiring, evaluation, retention, and compensation practices benefit taxpayers rather than benefiting the lowest rung of the federal workforce. In order to carry out the president's desires, political appointees must be given the tools, knowledge, and support to overcome the government or the federal government's obstructionist human resource departments. More fundamentally, the new administration must fill its ranks with political appointees. Divine Kirk and Dan's observed that the Trump administration appointed fewer political appointees in its first few months in office than any other recent presidency. This left career employees in charge in many places. This can occur even after departments have been fully staffed with political appointees. Vaught writes that the White House Office of Management and Budget should establish a reputation as the keeper of commander's intent, yet OMB is dominated by career employees who often try to overrule political appointees surviving in the various executive departments. Empowering political appointees across the administration is crucial to a president's success. All right. Continuing section 1, taking the reins of government. All right. Deep breath. Above all, the president and those who serve under him or her must be committed to the Constitution and rule of law. This is particularly true of a conservative administration which knows that the president is there to uphold the Constitution, not the other way around. If a conservative administration does not respect the Constitution, no administration will. In Chapter 1, former Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Rick Dearborn, writes that the White House Counsel must take seriously the duty to protect the powers and privileges of the president from encroachments by Congress, the judiciary, and the administrative components of the department and agencies. Equally important, the president must enforce the Constitution and laws as written rather than proclaiming new law unilaterally. Presidents should not issue mask or vaccine mandates, arbitrarily transfer student loan debt, or issue monarchical mandates of any sort. Legislators make the laws in a republic, not executives. It is crucial that all three branches of the federal government respect what Madison called the double security to our liberties, the separation of powers among the three branches of and the separation of powers between the federal government and the states. This double security has been greatly compromised over the years. Vaught writes, the modern executive branch writes federal policy, enforces that policy, and other adjudicates whether that policy was properly drafted and enforced. He described this as constitutionally dire, in urgent need of repair, adding nothing less than the survival of self-governance in America is at stake. When it comes to ensuring that freedom can flourish, nothing is more important than the deconstructing and centralized administrative state. Political appointees who are answerable to the president and have decision-making authority in the executive branch are key to this essential task. The next administration must not cede such authority to nonpartisan experts who pursue their own ends while engaging in groupthink. Insulated from American voters, the following chapters detail how the next administration can be responsive to the American people, not to entrenched elites. How it can take care that all the laws are faithfully executed, not merely those that the president desires to see executed. And how it can achieve results and not be stymied by an unelected bureaucracy. So sounds good. I definitely agree with destroying the bureaucratic state. These are the same agencies that got President Trump shot. Let's keep it a buck. These are the same agencies like the FBI that, got MLK killed, basically took part in in killing Martin Luther King. And that's a fact. It came out in a civil suit by Coretta Scott King against the I'm pretty sure it's the Memphis Police Department. Also, this bureaucracy got Kennedy killed. Goddamn. I mean, look, man, these people got too much power, bro. It's just you can't argue against that. And the people are being taxed to death. Inflation is killing us. Interest rates on housing and loans. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. From popular culture to academia, the American presidency has long been a prominent fixture of the national imagination, naturally so, since it is the beating heart of our nation's power and prestige. It has played, for instance, a feature role in innumerable movies and television shows, and has been prodded, analyzed, and critiqued by countless books, essays, and studies. But like nearly everything else in life, there is no substitute for firsthand experience, which this manual has compiled from the experience of presidential appointees and provides in accessible form for future use. With respect to the presidency, it is best to begin with our republic's foundational document. The Constitution gives the executive power to the president. It designates him as commander-in-chief and gives him the responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It further prescribes that the president might seek the assistance of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. Beginning with George Washington, every president has been supported by some form of White House office consisting of direct staff officers, as well as a cabinet comprised of department and agency leads. Since the inaugural administration of the late 18th century, citizens have chosen to devote both their time and their talent to defending and strengthening our nation by serving at the pleasure of the president. Their shared patriotic endeavor has proven to be a noble one, not least because the jobs in what is known as the White House office are among the most demanding in all of government. The president must rely on the men and women appointed to the White House office. There are simply not enough hours in the day to manage the affairs of state single-handedly. So delegation is not just advisable, it is essential. The decisions that assistants and senior advisors make will directly impact the administration, its legacy, and most important, the fate of the country. Their agenda must therefore be the president's agenda. Choosing who will carry out the agenda on a daily basis is not only one of the first decisions a president makes in office, but also one of the most critical. The tone and tempo of an administration are often determined on January 20th. All right, Chief of Staff. As with most of the positions that will be covered in this first chapter, the Chief of Staff is also an assistant to the president. However, the chief is truly first among equals of all presidential staff members. The chief is the most critical to implementation of the president's vision of the country. The chief also has a dual role as a manager of the staffs of both the White House office and the executive office of the president. The Chief of Staff's first managerial task is to establish an organizational chart for the White House. The White House office. It should be simple and contain clear lines of authority and responsibility to avoid conflicts. It should also identify specific points of contact for each element of the government outside of the White House. These contacts should include the White House liaison, who are selected by the Office of Presidential Personnel. Receiving guidance from the president, the chief endeavors to implement the president's agenda by setting priorities for the White House. This process begins by taking stock of the president's campaign promises, identifying current and prospective opportunities, and then delegating policy priorities among the departments and agencies of the cabinet and throughout the three White House policy councils: the National Economic Council, the Domestic Policy Council, the National Security Council. The president is briefed on all his policy priorities by his cabinet and senior staff as directed by the chief. The chief, along with senior White House official staffs, maps out the issues in themselves and themes that will be covered in daily and weekly. The chief then works with the policy councils, the cabinet, and the Office of Communications and Office of Legislative Affairs to sequence and execute the rollout of policies and announcements. White House counsel and senior advisors and senior counsels are also intimately involved. All senior staff report to the chief of staff. All right. This is just outlining governmental positions. So let's skip a lot of this. Let's see. They're just basically outlining these different jobs that the president has appointments for. Let's see if that's part of that. Office of Presidential Personnel. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. All right, we're gonna skip the White House office part. All right, let's see. All right, that's the White House office chapter. All right, Executive Office of the President of the United States. Let's see. This is more job shit. Survival of the self-governance in America is at stake. Management and budget. Execution of the policy across the this is just outlining the jobs and their specific duties. President's budget and executive appropriation. Coordinating and clearing. Mandate for leadership. Budget. Should we talk about the budget stuff? I mean, it's a good point here. Budget. The United States faces an untenable fiscal situation and owes $31 trillion on a debt that is steadily increasing. The OMB director should present a fiscal goal to the president early in the budget development process to address the federal government's fiscal irresponsibility. All right, so that's just the OMB's job. And, you know, if you guys want to look at this and how the president's cabinet is outlined, I think it's a good reference to take and then see who Trump appoints in these critical positions here. But shout out to the chat. We got Rocket Man, Rocky Matrix in here. While we get through this, Rocket Man. Shout out to bro. Sorry, I'm responding to some text. He says TikTok ban is not good. YouTube isn't free speech friendly. Sorry. Yes, I mean I agree with you, Rocket Man. Or yeah. Anthony Huber, I'm not seeing any right-wing extremism. Yep, nope. Beast Life over 50. It sounds good to me so far. Yep, it does. Gliding Mud Shark, Roger, you're rough, my guy. I think you should allow people to say what they want, no matter how wrong or ignorant. I agree. Just don't be disrespectful. Beast Life over 50, answering your Cash App question. Yes, but the Autumn Saints tag still works. National Security Council. So this is just all the jobs that the president has to. I mean, he has to employ a lot of people, and not everybody's going to be a good pick, honestly. But you just have to try your best. Yeah, I had to link my business account to my Cash App, so let's keep going. Central personnel agencies managing the bureaucracy. I mean, is this more job shit? Analysis and recommendations, managing the federal bureaucracy. And, you know, they pretty much outline how they wanted to do that. Merit hiring, a merit system. So you see merit hiring, merit system. I like that. Okay. The centrality of performance appraisal in the meantime. It's managed the workforce. It has been. He's basically outlining how these jobs are performed. Merit pay. That's good. Making the appeals process work. Good as well. Making civil service benefits economically and administratively rational. Okay. Market-based pay and benefits. Agreed. Reforming federal recruitment benefits. Federal recruitment benefits. Okay. GSA, landlord and contract management, General Service Administration. Reductions in the force, reducing the number of federal employees. Yep. So I agree with that. All right, let's see what they want to do about this. Reducing the number of federal employees seems an obvious way to reduce the overall expense of the civil service, and many prior administrations have attempted to do this. President Bill Clinton and Barack Obama began their terms, as did Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, by mandating a freeze on the hiring of new federal employees. But the efforts did not lead to permanent and substantive reductions in the number of non-defense federal employees. First, it is a challenge even to know which workers to cut. As mentioned, there are 2 million federal employees, but since budgets have exploded, so has the total number of personnel, with nearly 10 times more federal contractors than federal employees. Contractors are less expensive, but they are not entitled to high government pensions or benefits and are easy to fire and discipline. In addition, millions of state government employees work under federal grants and administrating federal programs. These cannot be cut directly. Cutting federal employment can be helpful and can provide a simple story to average citizens, but cutting functions, levels, funds, and grants is much more important than setting simple employment size. Simply reducing numbers can actually increase costs. OMB instructions following President Trump's employment freeze told agencies to consider buyout programs encouraging early retirements in order to shift costs from current budgets in agencies to the retirement system and minimize the number of personnel fired. The Environmental Protection Agency immediately implemented such a program, and OMB urged the passage of legislation to increase payout maximums from $25,000 to $40,000 to further increase spending under the cuts. President Clinton's OMB had introduced a similar buyout that cost the Treasury $2.8 billion, mostly for those who were going to retire anyway. Moreover, when a new employee is hired to fill a job recently vacated in a buyout, the government for a time is paying two people to fill one job. What is needed at the beginning is a freeze on all top career position hiring to prevent burrowing in by outgoing political appointees. Moreover, 4 factors determine the order in which employees are protected during layoffs: tenure, veterans' preference, seniority, and performance in the order of importance. Despite several attempts in the House of Representatives during the Trump years to enact legislation that would modestly increase the weight given to performance over time of service, the fierce opposition by federal managers associations and unions representing long-serving but not necessarily well-performing constituents explain why the bill fails to advance. A determined president should insist that performance be first and be wary of costly types of reductions in force. Impenetrable bureaucracy. Just some more about breaking that bureaucracy down. Creating a responsible career management service. All right. Managing personnel in a union environment. So that firing of the federal employees is a big thing that the mainstream media talks about. So I wanted to read that out. And it makes perfect sense. Awarding people based off of merit and not longevity in that role, because obviously you have people who have been in these roles for long times and they suck and they're selling the American people out. Fully staffing the ranks of political appointees. A reform bureaucracy. So, okay. Looking to get into more policy. The common defense. All right. So we're talking about war here. Department of Defense. See. I mean, a lot of it is just outlining, what these agencies do. Need reforms, prioritizing a denial defense against China, increase allied conventional defense burden sharing, implement nuclear modernization and expansion, increase allied counter-terrorist burden sharing, DoD acquisition and sustainment. Needed reforms, reforming the planning, programming, budgeting, and execution process. Strengthen America's defense industrial base. Optimize the DoD acquisition community. DoD research development, tests, and evaluation. I'm looking for more cultural impacts. Although this sounds good, it sounds fine. Needed reforms, champion, engage, and focus the American innovation ecosystem. So yeah, the way you do that is release all these technology patents. So there's so many patents on technology the government owns and it has bought out from inventors and scientists, and you have to release the advanced technology, that is not going to put the country in harm's way. Certain shit I guess you have to keep behind, but stuff that will greatly improve life, I believe, are concealed under U.S. patents that they own, and there are certain inventions that are being stymied, suffocated, smothered in the bureaucracy, and the government's using them, and the people have no access to them. And these inventions would significantly improve the day-to-day life of the American people. So we definitely need to do that. Improve the rapid development of technology to the battlefield. Develop a framework to protect the RDT and enterprise from the foreign exploitation. DoD foreign military sales. Needed reforms. Emphasize exportability with U.S. procurements. End informal congressional notification. Minimize barriers to collaboration. Reform the FMS contracting process. DoD personnel. Needed reforms. Rescue recruiting and retention. Restore standards of lethality and excellence. Shout out to B. Coleman with the $10 Cash App. I appreciate that, bro. He's definitely rocking along with this breakdown of Project 2025.
Hold on. Hello? Where we at? Oh, you want to know where I'm at? We outside!
All right. Eliminate politicization, reestablish trust and accountability, and restore faith to the force. All sounding pretty good there. Value the military family. Reduce the number of generals. Rank creep is pervasive. Okay, I like that. The number of 0 to 6 to 0 to 9 officers is at an all-time high across the armed services, above World War II levels, and the actual battlefield experience of these officer corps is at an all-time low. The next president should limit the continued advancement of many of the existing cadre, many of whom have been advanced by prior administrations for reasons other than their warfighting prowess. DoD intelligence, national defense, improve the intelligence process, expand the integration of intelligence activities, restore accountability and public trust. I still have yet to see any racist rhetoric or far right-wing rhetoric. Eliminate peripheral intelligence obligations that do not advance military readiness. I mean, a lot of this is just common sense. Rebuild the army. Focus on deployability and sustained operations. Transform army culture and training. Yes, definitely need that because we got a whole bunch of pansies in the army, the military. They're talking about the U.S. Navy. Invest and expand force structure. Reestablish the general board. Establish a rapid capabilities office. Accelerate the purchase of key munitions. Enhance warfighter development. U.S. Air Force. We're just getting the branches of the military. Needed reforms. Increase spending and budget accuracy in line with a threat-based strategy. So that I definitely agree with that. Reduced our budget needs to be based off of, okay, what threats are we facing? Like, we can't just be spending money on threats that aren't immediate or, within I guess like a 5-10 year span. I mean, we can't, obviously building the military is good, employing servicemen, but we definitely have too much military spending. getting all around, going on all around the globe. Reduce near-term and mid-term risks. Invest in future Air Force programs and efforts. U.S. Marine Corps. So needed reforms. Divest systems to implement the Force Design 2030 transformation. Transform the USM. Okay, hold on. So hold on. This one might actually be insightful. Divesting equipment that is less relevant to distributed low signature operations in contested maritime environment will make funds available for modernization. Transform USMC force structure. Eliminate all USMC law enforcement battalions. Transform at least one Marine infantry regiment into a Marine littoral regiment. Reduce the size of remaining infantry battalions. Divest systems of equipment that are better suited or to heavier U.S. Army units. Okay. Transform the USMC personnel paradigm. Align Navy amphibious shipbuilding with Force Design 2030. U.S. Space Force. Reverse the Biden administrative's defensive posture. So they're basically saying peace through strength. Reduce overclassification. Implement policies suited to a mature USSF. U.S. Cyber Command. Needed reforms. Ensure the U.S. Cyber Command is properly focused. Increase U.S. Cyber Command effectiveness. Rationalize strategy and doctrine. Special Operations Forces. Needed reforms. Make irregular warfare a cornerstone of security strategy. Counter China's Belt and Road Initiative globally. Establish credible deterrence through irregular warfare to protect the homeland. Nuclear deterrence. Okay, let's try and get through this war shit. All right, there we go. All right. Looking for more culture-based changes. Department of Homeland Security. Okay, let me go back to the contents and just skip ahead. How about that? Taking the reins of government, comm defense, general warfare, the economy, Department of Commerce, independent regulatory agencies. Oh, okay. I mean, honestly, when I'm looking through this thing, I really don't see anything about, besides them promoting family, I don't see anything about culture. It's more in-depth government reforms to make the government work more smoothly. That was general warfare. Department of Veterans Affairs. This table of contents is a little confusing though, because they're using the Roman numerals as page numbers, which, okay, that's fine, but shit, it gets you thrown off. Damn, where is it at? Okay. So we did section 2, the common defense. Oh, I do want to see what they say about the intelligence community. Mission statement: to arm a future incoming conservative president with the knowledge and tools necessary to fortify the United States intelligence community, to defend against all foreign enemies and ensure the security and prosperity of our sovereign nation, devoid of all political motivations, and to maintain constitutional civil liberties. The overview: the United States intelligence community is a vast, intricate bureaucracy spread throughout 18 independent and cabinet sub-agencies. According to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the IC's mission is to collect, analyze, and deliver foreign intelligence and counterintelligence information to America's leaders so that they can make sound decisions to protect our country. An incoming conservative president needs to use these intelligence authorities aggressively to anticipate and thwart our adversaries, including Russia, Iran, North Korea, and especially China. While maintaining counterterrorism tools that have demonstrated their effectiveness, this means empowering the right personnel to manage, build, and effectively execute actions dispersed through the IC to deliver intelligence in ever-changing world. It also means removing redundancies, mission creep, and IC infighting that could prevent these collection tools from providing objective, apolitical, and empirically backed intelligence to the ICs. Premier customer, the President of the United States. Today, as Abraham Lincoln famously said, the occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with occasion. We must think anew and act. All right. Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Okay, the ODNI was established in the aftermath of the attack of 9/11 and intelligence failures leading up to the 2003 U.S. war in Iraq. The office and its functions stem from authorities established under under executive orders promulgated by President George W. Bush, followed by statutory authorizations in the Intelligence Reform Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004. Proponents of ODNI hoped to establish reforms similar to the Goldwater-Nichols Department of Defense reforms of the 1980s, which identified recurring problems with DoD's command and control architecture and led to unified combatant commands with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as the senior ranking member of the armed forces and principal military advisor to the president. The ODNI has envisioned as a small but powerful IC coordinating agency led by a director of national intelligence as the president's principal intelligence advisor. The DNI would lead and provide oversight to the president's intelligence authorities while wielding a cudgel budget and appointment authorities to break institution silos that had caused past intelligence integration failures. Wow. I mean, I'm seriously trying to find any racial white supremacist rhetoric in this document. I mean, it's just not here, bro. It's not here. Where is it? Like, what's going on, man? I thought this was gonna be a, some Willie Lynch theory type shit. The fuck is going on? I'm really not seeing it, guys. I'm sorry, community. The mainstream media definitely lied to you. I mean, and let me go back to the table of contents because I am genuinely trying to find anything, any racial rhetoric at all. Ugh. Jesus. All right. And we only got about 18 more minutes. So I want to get to something juicy, but I mean, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, intelligence community, media agencies. Okay, media agencies. This might be why the media hates it. All right. Media agencies. Mission statement. The mission of the United States agency and global media is to inform, engage, and connect people around the world in support of freedom and democracy. However, this mission statement does not reflect the current work of the agency. The mission is noble, but the execution is lacking. To fulfill its mission, USAGM should also aim to present the truth about America and American policy, not parrot Americans' adversaries' propaganda and talking points. Originally formed as the Broadcasting Board of Governors in 1994, the BBG changed its name in 2018 to the United States Agency for Global Media. The USAGM is a sub-cabinet agency of the U.S. government with a budget of under $1 billion. The agency oversees two government broadcasting networks, the Voice of America and the Office of Cuba Broadcasting. USAGM also oversees 100% of the grant funding for several independent grantee organizations, including the Middle East Broadcasting Network, Radio Free Asia, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and the newly formed Open Technology Fund. The Voice of America provides news and information in 48 languages to a weekly audience of more than 326 million people worldwide. For more than 80 years, VOA journalists has applied news and information about the U.S. audience, specific regions of interest and concern, and the world at large. VOA radio and television signals are broadcast to approximately 3,500 affiliates, and satellite transmissions reach countries where free speech is banned or where civil society is under threat. VOA uses digital web and mobile media as well, which, while sometimes useful in propagating valuable information globally, has created specific violations of the agency's prohibition against broadcasting to the domestic U.S. audience, particularly with regard to flagrantly political content, as has been the practice with recent and current VOA content directors and managers. The network once had a generally well-received brand value, but it is deteriorated under decades of poor leadership and a loss of its once prized unbiased reporting. There are bright spots within VOA, but mismanagement and declining production values have diluted its once great reputation as a singular voice in American news broadcasting abroad. Okay. I mean, I really don't see. I mean, government agency, media outlets, obviously we don't rock with in the beginning, but I don't see how that's radical. These institutions are already there. They're just saying, let's make them work more unbiasedly and less politically swayed, and just depict the truth. Agency mission failures, necessary reforms. I am really hard pressed to find the racism in this. I seriously am. All right. Yeah, I'm not seeing it, man. I'm just not. Let's go back to the table of contents and jump around here. I mean, honestly, we don't even have to read the whole document because most of it is just administrative shit. It's not even giving a direction. It's saying this is the governmental organization. This is how it should run. This is how it's running now. That's literally all that they're saying here. Department of State, intelligence community, media agencies. We talked about that. Agency for International Development, Department of Agriculture, Department of Education. And they kind of gave us a breakdown of what they believe in Department of Education. And I think a lot of people are really harping on Department of Education and the downsizing of that. So let's get into that. Department of Education. The mission, federal education policy should be limited, and ultimately the federal Department of Education should be eliminated. When power is exercised, it should empower students and families, not government. In our pluralistic society, families and students should be free to choose from a diverse set of school options and learning environments that best fit their needs. Our post-secondary institutions should also reflect such diversity, with room for not only traditional liberal arts colleges and research universities, but also faith-based institutions, career schools, military academies, and lifelong learning programs. Elementary and secondary education policies should follow the path outlined by Milton Friedman in 1955, wherein education is publicly funded, but education decisions are made by families. Ultimately, every parent should have the option to direct his or her child's share of education funding through an education savings account funded overwhelmingly by the state and local taxpayers, which would empower parents to choose a set of education options that meet their child's unique needs. States are eager to lead in K-12 education for decades. They have acted independently of the federal government to pioneer a variety of constructive reforms and school choice programs. For example, in 2011, Arizona first piloted ESAs, which provided families roughly 90% of what the state would have spent on that child in public school to be used instead of education options such as private school tuition, online courses, and tutoring. In 2022, Arizona expanded the program to be available to all families. The future of education and freedom and reform in the states is bright and will shine brighter when regulation and red tape from Washington are eliminated. So basically they want to eliminate the Department of Education. I'm not mad at that either, because what the Department of Education is teaching now with all this trans shit and this critical race theory and all this goofy shit. I mean, niggas are coming out dumber than ever. I'm gonna just keep it a buck. The average black man, unfortunately, is reading at a 4th grade level. And who else can you blame but the Department of Education? And I know back then, them Negro schools, them all Negro schools, the segregated schools, they were actually teaching shit. They might not have had the best, equipment, but they was teaching shit, and niggas knew how to read and niggas knew how to speak. But nowadays it's just like, damn, if you don't have the Thug Max Alpha Simp dialect, like if you ain't talking like did brother, I also read shit. Like if you ain't talking about shit, what the fuck, Department of Interior, shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like if you ain't talking about some type shit, or you know what I'm saying, on some period shit, if you a bitch or something. Like if you I'm telling you, bro, it's crazy. If you just speak properly, you are accosted in the community. So maybe getting rid of the Department of Education would be a good thing. I mean, it definitely wasn't supposed to have the power and oversight that it has now. I think we all can agree on that. So we got 10 minutes here. All right. Department of Energy, Environmental Protection Agency. I'm trying to look at more cultural. Department of Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Department of Interior, Justice, Department of Labor, related agencies, Department of Transportation, Department of Veterans Affairs. Federal Reserve. Oh, let's see what they say about the Federal Reserve. Money is the essential unit of measurement for the voluntary exchange that constitutes the market economy. Stable money allows people to work freely, helps businesses grow, facilitate investment, support saving for retirement, and ultimately provide for economic growth. The federal government has long made policy regarding the nation's money on behalf of the people through their elected representatives in Congress. Over time, however, Congress has delegated the responsibility first to the Department of Treasury and now to the quasi-public Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913 when most Americans lived in rural areas and the largest industry was agriculture. The impetus was a series of financial crises caused by irresponsible banks and other financial institutions that overextended credit and by poor regulations. The architects of the Federal Reserve believed that quasi-public clearinghouse acting is as lender of last resort would reduce financial instability and end severe recessions. However, the Great Depression of the 1930s was needlessly prolonged in part because of the Federal Reserve's inept management of the money supply. More recessions followed in the post-World War II years. In the decades since the Federal Reserve was created, there has been a downturn roughly every 5 years. This monetary dysfunction is related in part to the impossibility of fine-tuning the money supply in real time, as well as to the moral hazard inherent in a political system that has demonstrated a history of bailing out private firms when they engage in excess in speculation. Public control of money creation through Federal Reserve System has another major problem. Government can abuse this authority for its own advantage. By printing money to finance its operations, this necessitates the original Federal Reserve decentralization and political independence. Not long after the central bank's creation, however, monetary decision-making power was transferred away from regional members, banks, and consolidated in the Board of Governors. The Federal Reserve's independence is presumably supported by its mandates to maintain stable prices, yet central bank independence is challenged in two additional ways. First, like any other public institution, the Federal Reserve corresponds to the potential of political oversight when faced with challenges. Consequently, its independence in conducting monetary policy is more assured when the economy is experiencing sustained growth and when there is low employment and price stability, but less so in a crisis. Additionally, political pressure has led the Federal Reserve to its power to regulate banks as a way to promote politically favorable initiatives, including those aligned with environmental, social, and governance objectives. Even formal grants of power by Congress have not markedly improved Federal Reserve actions. Congress gave the Federal Reserve greater regulatory authority over banks. After the stock market crashed in 1929 during the Great Depression, the Federal Reserve was given the power to serve reserve the power to set reserve requirements on banks and to regulate loans for the purchase of securities. During the stagflation of the 1970s, Congress expanded the Federal Reserve's mandate to include maximum employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest rates. In the wake of the 2008 global financial crisis, the Federal Reserve's banking and financial regulatory authorities were broadened even further. The Great Recession also led to innovations by the central bank, such as additional large-scale asset purchases. Together, the expansion have created significant risks associated with too big to fail financial institutions and have facilitated government debt creation. Collectively, such developments have eroded the Federal Reserve's economic neutrality. In essence, because of its vastly expanded discretionary powers with respect to monetary and regulatory policy, the Fed lacks both operational effectiveness and political independence. To protect the Federal Reserve's independence and to improve monetary policy outcomes, Congress should limit its mandates to the sole objective of stable money. The chapter provides a number of options aimed at achieving these goals, along with the costs and benefits of the policy recommendations. These recommended reforms are divided into two parts: broad institutional changes and changes involving the Federal Reserve's management of the money supply. So they want to make broad institutional changes to the Federal Reserve. I think we should just get rid of the Federal Reserve altogether, go back to a gold standard. The power of the purse, it should be delegated back to Congress, and they need to agree on spending bills. They also need to agree on, just regulating monetary policy, and that's how we do it. Otherwise, just let the free market go. I don't see why we need to heavily, obviously there should be some regulations on banks for sure, but we don't have to set the money supply. The money supply should be based off of intrinsic value, which is based off of maybe a precious metal or maybe military or whatever, oil production. All these things, right now we're on a petrodollar standard as well. So, you can use different methods to set the money supply, but we definitely need to get back on some type of standard so that you can't just continue to inflate. But yeah, I really don't think that we should have a Federal Reserve in the first place. And if we do have a Federal Reserve, it should be ran by the government, even though I know, it should be ran by a competent and informed government. And they all should be, mandated to be CPAs, and they need to have a background in finance or something like that. But that concludes our time today. I definitely want to get into more parts of this document, but so far I have not seen anything, not one thing that is racist in Project 25. I haven't seen one thing. The only thing that could have been deemed as racist were the facts that they were presented about the Black community. And that's not racist. It just hurts. It's not racist. It just hurts. Okay. There's a difference. It hurts that, the fact of the matter is 70% of Black children are born out of wedlock. That hurts. That stings. But does that make it racist? No. It means that something needs to change. And without group acknowledgement and group accountability, you get group failure. So I appreciate everybody joining the stream, the Project 2025, the controversial Project 2025 stream. I am going to be doing a part 2. I'm going to try and read more clauses, more passages. I am combing through this document, trying to find one racist thing. I really am. As a matter of fact, wow. So Black is mentioned 35 times in this document. So we can actually take a look at this. I got 3 minutes. All right. Black is mentioned 35 times in this document. One time it's somebody's name. The second time, we already read that 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of Black children. Another time, the third time, let's see. In Africa, Skinner writes, the U.S. should focus on core security, economic, and human rights rather than impose radical abortion and pro-LGBT initiatives. And this is about bringing, all this homosexuality and political stuff into the military. Divisive symbols such as the rainbow flag or Black Lives Matter flag have no place next to the stars and stripes of our embassies. Wow. Yeah. So I agree with that. Black Lives Matter is a scam. The fourth time it's mentioned is BlackRock. Okay. Let's read this. When it comes to China, Skinner writes that a policy of compete where we must, but corporate where we can, has demonstrably failed. The People's Republic of China's aggressive behavior, she writes, can only be curbed through external pressure. Efforts to protect or excuse China must be stopped. She observes many were quick to dismiss even the possibility of COVID escape from the Chinese research laboratory. Meanwhile, Skinner writes, global leaders, including President Joe Biden, have tried to normalize or even laud Chinese behavior. She adds, in some cases, these voices like global corporations, giants, BlackRock, and Disney, or the National Basketball Association directly benefit from doing business with Beijing. Ooh, that was a bar. Okay. The use of Blackie's warrants should be operationalized with ICE. So this is somebody's name. Okay. And this, I guess the warrant is named after somebody. Blackie's warrants. Here it is. 6-time Black is mentioned. And this is just Department of Homeland Security terminology. This is not something Project 2025 created. Black letter implementation of this law. BlackRock again. Blackmail. Right. Overview. Okay. This is about census and the mistreatment of Black Americans. So let's read this. Doesn't seem very racist to me. As a matter of fact, it seems like there has been there's acknowledgement of mistreatment from the U.S. government toward the Black community. For most of our history, the federal government played a minor role in education. Then over a 14-month period beginning in 1964, Congress planted the seeds for what would become the U.S. Department of Education. In July of that year, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964 after Congress reached a consensus that the mistreatment of Black Americans was no longer tolerable and merited a federal response. In this case of the Elementary School Education Act of 1965 and the Higher Education Act of 1965, Congress sought to improve educational outcomes for disadvantaged students by providing additional compensatory funding for low-income children and lower-income college students. The 12th time Black funding to institutions should be block granted and narrowed to historically Black colleges and universities and tribally controlled colleges. So they're saying that they want to give funds to HBCUs. School would be in violation of federal law for treating Black and white students differently. This is about the Department of Education. Let's see. Under the Obama administration, schools were at risk of losing federal funding if they treated Black and white students equally, but had aggregate differences in the rates of school discipline by race. And we all know that that's BS because we know that Black kids get in trouble more. Unfortunately, this is not something that, I mean, it's just based off of what these single mothers are sending to the schools. Unfortunately, Black kids in a mixed school, if it's like 50-50 Black and white, the Black kids are going to get in more trouble, not because the school is racist, just because niggas be getting up to more shit. It's just the reality. I mean, anybody who's been to public school can tell you that. Now, I'm not saying that white kids don't get in trouble in school, and I'm not saying that they don't do bad shit in school. I'm not saying they can't bully or anything like that. Of course they can. Of course they get in trouble. Of course they are. Of course they do. But if you want to really look at if it was, blank slate equal, you get in trouble for an offense that you do, unfortunately, you're going to see a lot more Black kids getting suspended and getting ISS because their parents are just sending them to school and telling them they don't have to listen to the teacher. Like back in the day, it's like, okay, if you get in trouble in school, the teacher threatens to call your parents. In this day and age, the kids are threatening to call their own parents and saying, my mama finna come to the school and beat your ass. I mean, let's keep it a buck. And we know that Black kids are fighting in schools way more than any other race. Maybe the Mexicans are close to touching them. Maybe, but I mean, to me, it's not even close, right? I went to a majority Black high school, and every day there were fights, if not every other day, and it is definitely every week. So Blackouts, black box. Okay. Implement a pro-fatherhood messaging campaign with nearly 41% of children born without a married father in the home and nearly 69% among Black Americans. The fatherhood problem is clear. Similar to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' 2022 fatherhood bill, HMRF, funds should be used to support national messaging campaigns that affirm the role fathers play in the lives of their children, that recognize the financial hardship the fathers themselves face, and that seek to provide relationship education to fathers who were raised without a father in the home. So, I mean, we all know that there's a deadbeat daddy epidemic in the Black community, and it seems like they're supporting Black fathers. So that's something that the left hates. Black burn. It is black letter law. Black rock again. Black rock again. Black rock again. Black Ford. Black colleges and universities. Black box. Today, big tech offers a black box, flipping its outlook from black to red. Josh Blackman, and we're back to square one. So every time that black was mentioned in this document, it was outlining a fact or it was something positive that would help and be a net positive in the Black community. I have deemed, just from my combing through so far, and we're going to do part 2 as well, I have deemed that Project 2025 is not racist. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind implementing a lot of these policies into the next presidency. So, Trump, maybe it's a strategic move to distance yourself from Project 2025 just because it's not your work. But I wouldn't bash them. I wouldn't, say, oh, I don't even know what the hell they are. Or I don't know. If I was Trump, I would say, if you read the whole document, it's 922 pages. It's a lot. Most of it is breaking down the responsibilities of the president's cabinet. I would say half of it is breaking down the responsibilities of the president's cabinet. And then the other half is instituting policies. But all the policies are instituting is saying, this is the department. This is how it is working now. This is how it should work. And then they also are promoting family. They are against transgenderism and and Scam Lives Matter. These political initiatives that infect our governments and create chaos and division. I'm rocking with Project 2025 so far. So from now on, I will be an advocate. I will be an advocate of Project 2025. Like all degree or documents and all ideas or proposals of ideas and government ideas, especially. I don't agree with everything, but I agree with most of it. And I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's evil. And I don't think it's racist. This is coming from a Black man who literally just read it and, sped through a lot of it. But we read it. And as a matter of fact, I comprehend better when I'm just like reading it fast out loud. Now, if I do that in my head, I'm going to be like, okay, where the fuck am I? Like, I'll get lost if I do it in my head. But yeah, man, I like reading out to you guys. Obviously, you guys are gonna critique my reading comprehension skills. I thought I did pretty good, but I slipped up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, I like the Project 2025. If anybody asks me about it, I'm gonna say it's a good thing. I'm gonna say that they have an actual plan to make America great again. I'm gonna say that they have policies that positively benefit HBCUs. They have policies that positively benefit the Black family and the Black male father as well. He referenced Ron DeSantis bill in Florida that is empowering fathers, not only Black fathers, but fathers in general. So I think that overall Project 2025 has really good ideas. I think it's a good thing. I don't think it's racist. I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's a threat to democracy. I think that it is plain old, boring, cookie cutter, vanilla conservative values, which I believe is what is going to save this country. So I appreciate everybody joining the stream. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Make sure you comment right after. Make sure you comment right after. That really helps the algorithm. We have 38 people in the chat right now. I need to see 38 comments at the end of this. I mean, y'all got me reading this damn KKK document and all this type of shit. I'm risking my life reading Project 2025. And then I find out that the shit ain't racist. And now I'm tight. Now I'm like, damn, where the fuck is the racism? I'm trying to go riot right now. You feel me? Like, damn, I'm trying to riot 2025, but I just don't see any basis to do so. So y'all already know what it is. It is the Black Gen Z Mindset, aka BGZM News 17, aka Jenquavious Jackson, and we are going to send it off to Jenquavious Jackson to take us away, guys. I appreciate you for sticking with me, reading this document. Project 2025 is not a racist plan for America. It is a mandate for leadership and a conservative promise to the American people, which I hope a lot of this gets implemented into our government, and Trump takes heed to this and he chooses his cabinet according to this document. So y'all already know what it is. I appreciate you guys. Be safe out there. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time. What's good, Shadow Realm? It's your boy Jenquavious Jackson, and y'all already know I'm demonetized and shadow banned in this bitch. So if you want to contribute, go to the Cash App, the PayPal, the GoFundMe, or join the Patreon. Also, don't forget to visit the merch store for all your favorite BGZM News 17 gear, including our exclusive Trump is a Blood t-shirt. Go fast before they sell out. They are already flying off the shelves, no cap. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time.
I'm here on the corner of MLK and Medgar Evers, and it's a very tranquil scene compared to just a couple hours ago where a drive-by shooting
just took place. Excuse me. I'm getting live updates as we speak. I've just been updated to the amount of casualties from this drive-by shooting, and I'm getting reports that 2 people were actually declared deceased and 27 others were shot and injured but are in stable condition. And although we must pray for the families of the fallen, we must also praise God for the aim of the super gremlin. If you want to know more about the victims of this crime, make sure you add BGZM News 17 on Patreon at www.patreon.com/BlackGenZMindset. Also, don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and comment on the video to continue the discussion on how we can find solutions to all this gun violence in the streets. For more hard-hitting news coverage from the community, by the community, I'm Jenquavious Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, BGZM News 17.
And cut.
All right, dog. Let's get the out of here before these niggas come back.
Whoa.
Yo!
Whoa.
Ain't that nigga J?
Nah, that ain't me. That ain't me.
He just went live
That
with
ain't
that
me.
funky ass suit
That's
on.
that nigga. That's not me.
Hey, get that nigga.
Jenquavious Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia. Pray for me.
Gang violence and other kind of violence. So it is what it is.